Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about a very adult topic. So this is a preliminary disclaimer to warn people that if you have small children in the room, you may want to put a pause on this video and watch it at another time. This video will be taking a look at adult entertainment for women, and Asmongold and his editors requested that women explain themselves.
Bro, I saw this. Look.
Barnes & Noble added a monster, enjoyer section.
Now, I'm not going to say it. Fuck it, I'm going to say it. How the fuck do women have any room to say men are degenerate when they have literal books at Barnes & Noble about fucking Baphomet? What the hell is going on? Every single one of them it's a girl, and this weird, it's not even a dude. It's what is this? What is this? The Dragon's Bride. 5 Shades of Grey is the same crazy shit, dude. Yeah, but at least 50 Shades of Grey is a guy. All I'm saying is I don't ever want to hear about the things that men like are disgusting. Look at this. This is crazy. And it's out in the open. It's okay, hear me out. Like, that's not, yeah, guys. This is degenerate. This is normal. This is bad. This is good. See?
All right. I am a woman. I have read romance. I have had an up and down relationship with romance, to be honest. I have a very strange and weird interaction with romance in general, but I also have written fan fiction that has had romance in it, and even more importantly, I am a ghostwriter who has in the past written romance books for her clients. So I'm going to break this down nice and simple for everyone. And some of this information that I'm going to share today, I have already talked about in previous videos, and more information will probably be shared in other videos coming in the future. So let's begin. Without further ado, let's look at some basic information that we need to talk about before we get into the question of what these books are all about. So let's start off with biology. First off, we need to remember that what I've touched on before in my review of Ogas and Gadam's book, A Billion Wicked Thoughts, all right? In that review, we talked about male and female desire and how these two sexes process desire. The two researchers, Ogas and Gadam, basically tell us something that we probably already know. Women and men do not process desire the same way. Now, generally speaking, disclaimer, we are speaking in generalities here, all right? Now, there may be up to 25% of both sexes that are atypical or may experience different patterns of thought naturally. Furthermore, these generalities do not take into account maturation or individuation of the individuals. It does not take into account traumatic experiences. So if you are someone who is thinking, hey, this doesn't quite fit me as a man or as a woman, don't worry or worry. It's up to you to decide how you want to approach this situation, but there are some general statements we can make about men and women. So let's get into what we can learn from studies that Ogas and Gadam cite. Well, according to these studies, on a fundamental biological level, male and female brains are not one-to-one the same. Female brains appear to have more connectivity between the halves of the brain, and as a result, delight in social and linguistic interactions, whereas males tend to skew one side of the brain or the other and prefer to experience things or interact with visuals. Number 2, this correlates with males preferring to work with things while females prefer to work with people. Number 3, these preferences also determine how desire is negotiated, resulting in different forms of entertainment for men and women when it comes to creating or capitalizing on desire. This is why porn for women generally looks different from porn for men. Okay, reality. Secondly, we also need to remember that expecting a minority of people who are either born that way or traumatized into a pattern of traumatized thoughts, setting aside those people. Most people seek out physical and emotional bonds. Most people, when paired well, will seek out sex also. Men want sex, women want sex. Now, why men want sex, how they process their desires, what stimulates them, etc., that is different. As we noted above, men tend to have visual cues that trigger them almost like a reflex. Only time and self-control help them learn how to navigate appropriately in social situations where their reflexive desires are not beneficial or acceptable. Women have a more complex system that requires various checkpoints or checkboxes to be met before they feel comfortable or interested enough to act on the desire physically. Maturation and confidence, or a bad combination of poor societal inputs, can help women to overcome some of these hurdles faster. So there are ways for women to lower those barriers, those natural barriers, so they can access desire faster. This is why, for example, women will play fast and loose when they are drunk. Drunkenness simply helps women access their root interest in sex, but it's lowering the parts of the brain that are assessing risk. And this is true for men as well, right? Like, there are many, many thoughtful and considered men who, upon becoming drunk, are going to not go through all the pros and cons of a situation, and they are also going to be able to achieve certain things or do certain things. It's not going against who they are on a fundamental level. It's simply enabling them to access those parts of themselves that they want to access right away. And of course, this can be very, very intoxicating, literally, and dangerous. Yes. So this liquid courage, for example, is a way for, let's say, women to access their desires without having to do all of that thinking that they first usually need to process in order to have that desire. All right. So setting aside alcohol, I don't think alcohol is a great way. I think maturation and learning to be confident and honestly having a healthy readiness to experience, sex and desire without being unsafe is the key to happiness for women. However, in general, the idea that women don't need or don't want sex is a lie. Okay, so it doesn't matter what religion or what ideology tells you, women need and want sex. It's so so no woman should be grandstanding and being like, oh, I would never do that. The reality is, given the right opportunity, most people who are mentally and physically healthy are ready to get involved sexually speaking. Expectations. Third, there are social trends where the sexes criticize each other for unrealistic expectations. When one or the other pursues fantasy, there is a real danger of that entertainment experience bleeding into real life, affecting expectations about future partners. For example, men want big breasts that are eternally perky. Women want rich men who are emotionally available. When a man responds to sexual content in his entertainment, some women point fingers, calling men disgusting pigs. And in cases where females haven't individuated, these women will literally feel like they are failing expectations of men. All right. So the woman's going to think, oh my gosh, those boobs aren't real. I can't have those boobs. You're a pig to want those kinds of boobs. And this is where I think women need to grow a pair and just be like, okay, that's the guy having fun. Given that the man is mature and has his head screwed on straight, he's not going to expect that of me, and I'm going to be fine. I don't need to feel defensive. I don't need to feel wanting. I am enough. And women have to tell themselves that a lot, because women are very sensitive about what men think about them. Extremely sensitive. All right. But that doesn't mean that men are just bad because women feel this way naturally. It also means that the women have responsibility to get themselves in order. Now, when a woman responds to her form of adult entertainment, men conflate the woman's enjoyment with their own. They might start to expect certain things from the woman. So they mistake her reading romances or having some kind of, adult entertainment enjoyment as being ready to have sex. Okay. And men will be complaining about the behavioral and the social expectations of men implicit in those forms of media. Okay, so a guy might be thinking, wait a second here, no guy can achieve that level of competence and emotional availability. I'm not maturing fast enough to be there in that way for you. You're delusional to expect a man to be emotionally ready for you all the time. Now, the reality is that hypocrisy and selfishness exists on both sides, right? Both sexes are capable of being hypocritical and selfish, and they both pretend that their expectations are 100% valid, all right, while at the same time dismissing the other's expectations. And this is just a situation I've seen as someone who's sitting on the sidelines with popcorn in her hand. I'm looking at men blaming women for having expectations, and I am looking at women blaming men for having expectations. It's a shit show as far as I'm concerned. It's just really terrible. Okay, so when Asmongold points out, see, women are perverts too, he is right in one sense, okay, but wrong in another sense. He is right that women have desires, yes, but he is wrong in understanding that those desires are the same as what men are experiencing. And if you read any of those books, even the books that he was looking at, you'd know what I mean. However, the good news is that nobody watching this video has to read those books. I am here to explain it all. Once again, I am obviously a female. I am a literature graduate. I have the ability to analyze and to think critically. So I can be here both as a writer and as an academic and as an educator to explain what is going on right now in the romance industry, to add some context to what is going on on this bookshelf. And yeah, let's get into some basic explanations. Okay, so first question. I know this sounds a bit off topic, but trust me on this one, okay? How many women consume romance? How many women consume romance? Well, here are some stats I found. According to Words Rated, romance sales grew by 52% in 2023, possibly driven by its increasingly popular subgenre romantasy, which is a combination of fantasy and romance. Another stat suggests that romance novels generate around 1.4 billion in revenue. Okay, romance reached over 39 million printed units sold over the last 12 months as of May 2023. The romantasy tag alone has over 450 million views on TikTok and has billions of views across all social media. Sales of romance print books increased 52% in the 12 months ending May 2023, according to Circana, formerly IRI, and the NPD group. Okay, and the reason for this increase was linked to the pandemic. Now, if we look only at Canada, and the reason why I have Canadian stats is because I am from Canada. Okay, overall, in Canada, romance sales increased by 42% from 2017 to 2022. Interestingly, most of the increase happened during 2021 and 2022, with the latter having the highest sales of all 6 years. And this is probably, once again, this is all due to people being locked in their home, and a woman is just going to go on her phone and read romance or buy romance. LGBTQ plus saw an increase of 10,406% over the 6-year period, with the most significant growth happening between 2020 and 2022. Sales from 2020 to 2021 increased by 301%, and sales from 2021 to 2022 increased by 136%. So there appears to be, in general, even within niche markets, within the romance industry, there appears to be growth. All right, that is generally stats for books that you can buy in the store and books that you can buy online, let's say on Kindle, things like that, Kobo, etc., etc. All right, what about free stuff though? All right, this does not touch free stuff. So let's head over to Wattpad, one of the largest sites that you can get, has a tremendous international base. What are we looking at globally here? Well, let's take a look at some basic numbers for Wattpad. 90 million people discover and share stories on Wattpad monthly as of September 2023. The average session time spent on the Wattpad platform is 60 minutes. 26 billion minutes are spent on the Wattpad platform every month. 92% of the audience are Gen Z and Millennial. Gen Z reads more romance compared to other generations at 43%, according to Wattpad. And according to a Wattpad spokesman, Anderson, our demographics are more than 70% female, and 80% of Wattpad users are millennials or Gen Zs. Okay, so I did some very basic crunching. My math isn't super good, right? I'm a literature student, like graduate. I'm not a I'm not a math person. But let's take a little look here. If we take 92% of 90 million per month, that means 82,800,000 Gen Z or millennials are accessing Wattpad. Okay. Now, 43% of that 82,800,000 is 35,604,000 females are reading romance, or at least a huge chunk of them are reading romance. Now, 43% of 82, the 82 million, that's giving us about 35 and a half mil reading romance. 70% of that 82 million is women. So that takes us to about 57,960,000 women. So I think there probably would be a way to figure out of the 35 million readers, how many of them would be overlapping with the secondary stat. But basically, all you can just take away from this is that a large portion, we're talking over 30 million people every month, are reading romance for free on Wattpad. And a large, significant portion of them are women, okay? And this is for free online. Now we get to the important part. Do most women consume this type of supernatural / monster / human content? Okay, so the answer is no. Contemporary romance is the most prominent romance subgenre, according to my research, generally encompassing stories set after the 1970s. Contemporary romance deals with modern problems and themes, and you can expect a degree of realism that you won't find in other subgenres. And most women prefer contemporary romance. Another part of romance readers is hugely devoted to romantic suspense. So this would be like a thriller or psychological thriller combined with romance. And also erotic and historical genres are very, very popular. According to Canadian statistics by Alarcon, 49% of all romance print book sales are contemporary, 14% are romantic comedy, and 5% are historical. So the chances of women enjoying a romance between Mothman and a female is actually, it's not common. It's a niche market. Now, is romance purely romance? Not these days, okay? Nowadays, romance has a variety of some subgenres that are burgeoning. This reflects women's transforming interests. Not that I want to imply that women's interests have like 110% transformed, okay? I think women have always been interested in fantasy and the paranormal and folktales. In fact, there's a reason why lies and myths are often linked to old wives' tales, right? Because women have been involved in making stories for a long time. However, I think with more input from people, more people getting involved in the romance industry, this has resulted in people basically trying out new things, and now we're having a whole bunch of different types of subgenres. So there's period romance, fantasy romance, otherwise known as romantasy, supernatural and paranormal romance, contemporary romance. Then you have the yaoi yuri, that would be the the FF, the LGBTQ plus queer romances for those who like to experience romance through same-sex pairings. Now, why are we seeing women pairing with beasts or monsters? Well, more and more women are being drawn into supernatural, paranormal, and fantasy genres. they've always liked these kinds of stories, but this generation, I imagine, grew up on Harry Potter. They want more of the fantastical, and this is the only way to enjoy it. Really, in fact, if you look at Amazon right now, you will see that for the past while, romantasy has become a top-selling genre, dominating general fantasy lists. Okay, this is just a trend of some kind that has been happening recently, and it has a lot of the epic fantasy uh, booktube community kind of up in arms of what's happening to our fantasy. Well, how can I say this? But ever since the dime novel has come out, women have been actually really dominating the industry in terms of publishing, in terms of putting out stuff that they want to read. We're just really seeing it on Amazon right now because, in my opinion, the big names like Brandon Sanderson and George R. R. Martin and, J.R. Tolkien and J.K. Rowling, all of these have, for one reason or another, not been putting out content, and they're just not dominating the lists as they ordinarily would be. But this does allow for interesting things like lit RPG, which is actually a very male-dominated space, to suddenly start clawing its way up the charts. It's very fascinating. You can watch my video where we go through several online lists to take a look and see, like, oh my gosh, what is trending right now on Amazon? What's trending right now on Barnes & Noble? It's very eye-opening. If you're wondering, oh gee, why is Hollywood trying to access a casual market? Why are they trying to skew things towards women? If you go on Amazon and you just look at the general fantasy category, you will know what is going on. Okay, so anyway, that's my rant done there. So anyhow, it's clear that some women, not all, not even most, are looking for something fresh. Okay, they want to get their fantasy and their paranormal into their romance. But as we noted before, this is not common. This is not your general female. It is a subsection of females that are looking for this. So the tinfoil hat time. Let's get on some tinfoil hat. Why are women exploring these perverted or bizarre pairings? Okay, why? All right, tinfoil hat. Everyone got it on? All right, here it is. Freedom. Freedom, pure and simple. I recall talking with someone who was left-leaning about why male-on-male pairings is popular among female groups. Subgenre. There's a whole subgenre of gay sex that's written by and for straight women, and it's coded heterosexually, but it's two guys. So why is this happening? The answer was really surprising. You see, I had thought that it would be something like men are hot, there are more men on page, more hotness. And I also thought maybe some women would just genuinely enjoy, I don't know, gay sex. I don't know. No, apparently not. Okay. The reason why the gay males are being coded with heterosexual terms is because there are females out there who feel that male-male pairings allow them to enjoy rougher and more traditional forms of relationship dynamics without feeling threatened as feminists. So basically, the strong woman of today, they don't feel like it's okay to be tossed over the shoulder and dragged to a cave by He-Man because feminism. But her, internal biological desires to explore the wilder side of relationships still remains. So what are you going to do? So anyway, if you want to have a strong male behaving more archetypally strong toward another female, it feels wrong for these kinds of women. All right, feels wrong. They can't enjoy it. So what they do instead is they have a male behaving more archetypally strong or aggressive, and sometimes even psychopathic, toward another male, the female-coded twink. And this becomes a viable path for the strong feminist woman to enjoy rough sex or more traditionally coded pairings. And I can tell you that some of this stuff gets really, really, really dark. And they have to put warnings, like trigger warnings at the front, and be like, this will have kidnapping and dubcon and other things that I can't even say because YouTube will demonetize me. Not that I'm actually getting really monetized by YouTube, but here we go. Anyhow, look, if you're hiding your interests and the direction of your sex drive behind gay men, I think that's pretty wild. I think it's sad. It's a bit funny. But once again, this is just a tinfoil hat. This is just a theory. And it was told to me by a left leaning person that these pairings allow women to explore more safely. And I think it's kind of stupid, honestly. Women should just admit, okay, that they enjoy specific fantasies and that these fantasies won't determine their IRL experiences in the same way that men should be able to enjoy specific fantasies that won't determine their IRL experiences. The fact that you have to code something in a different way to hide wanting a traditionally powerful man is just wild. Now, I think this is indirectly linked to this whole thing where you've probably heard of this before, where like in video games or in a book or in a TV show, people are like, oh, this thing happened in the TV show, and because it's happening in the TV show, that means that people might do it IRL, and people are not going to understand the difference between a story or an experience in a video game, what's happening in IRL. So like we have to make sure that all of our entertainment is sanitized, because Lord forbid people mistake the difference between what we want IRL and what we are enjoying in our fantasy situation. And this concern, this crossing of the streams, this fear that the crossing of the streams will happen, has a little bit of foundation. Because I think if you do keep on, consuming certain kinds of entertainment long term, it probably will have an effect on you. But as long as you're in a direction of growth and you're keeping your head screwed on straight, crossing the streams won't happen, right? You will know, I'm playing COD and I'm playing COD today, but tomorrow that does not mean that I will go out and commit violence in society. There's we don't cross the streams. This concern about crossing the streams is so pervasive among certain groups of women that they can't even enjoy what is normal for them to enjoy. And they have to hide it behind a mask. All right? They have to hide it behind something else in order to kind of not actually confront what they're really wanting. And of course, wokeism, particularly in terms of consent, is also creeping in. So most women find overtures for constant consent to be a mood killer. However, there's a niche crowd that finds the moment of requesting and achieving consent to be imperative. Now, I find that if a man or topping partner is constantly asking for consent in a scene, I'm like, nah, take me out of here. Nope. And it's like, no, I'm done. But for some people, it's actually a turn on. It's like a whole kind of like, I don't want to say woke fetish, but it kind of feels like it sometimes. However, your average woman is not looking for this kind of consent fetish thing. And so what they really want is maybe, tinfoil hat time, they maybe just want to explore some fun, darker, or even more traditional relationship dynamics in a safe space. And anyway, these strange pairings that are on this bookshelf are actually representative, in my opinion, of the repressed desires of strong modern women who want to enjoy safe physical dominations paired with emotional availability and a heart, even if the cover looks weird. I assure you 110% that the tropes within the page remain the same. Let's take a look together, shall we? Yeah, let's deep dive. Because guess what? One of them is free on Kindle Unlimited. So I downloaded it and had a look. I may have experienced brain rot, so from this point onward, let's take a closer look. Disclaimer, we're going to be looking at, and I will be putting on the screen some very, very spicy content. Okay. I'm going to do an in-depth review of this book, perhaps in another video. So please like, comment, subscribe to my channel. And if you want me to go into depth of what this book is actually about and unpack everything that I found within it, please comment below and let me know what you are thinking. But let's get into the summary of my findings. This is going to be my general takeaway from the book. All right. And this is simply a tantalizer for what could come So once again, tell me if you would like a complete review of the book, and I will give the people what they want as far as I'm able. So observation number 1, the male lead represents sanctuary for the strong woman. As such, he puts her comfort and safety above his own physical desire, putting off having sex until chapter 13, the halfway mark of the book. Chapter 11 through 12, he orally pleasures her and then withholds because he wants to play the long game of properly wooing her, at which point she comes onto him, and there is this whole will you control yourself kind of back and forth. Without going into deep plot explanation, I will just say that the main female character is a domestic abuse victim. She ends up in a situation where she feels she has no choice but to sign a deal with the devil, literally. I think his name was Azariel or whatever, and is given as a bride to a dragon in an alternate dimension for 7 years. Now, recognizing that she is traumatized, the MMC goes slow, and as a result, the ensuing plot is literally like every other normal romance. This is simply the titillation of the abnormal, or the potential, shall we say. Literally, the whole thing is strong woman needs help, good man, emotionally available man, strong, emotionally available man steps in to save her, okay, or help her. Okay, now let's get into some details. That's what you're all here for, aren't you? So observation 2, the male, while being dragon, is and also being bestowed with 2 dicks, is largely still humanoid, okay? I can read this one without blushing, so let's read it. Soul moves. Anyway. Okay. I'm just trying to get past the fact that it's in present tense verb. But anyway, let's keep going. Soul moves, jerking my attention back to the present. He descends the steps smoothly, and I can't help examining his body. His chest is very human, broad shoulders descending to well-defined pecs and a solid stomach. I should stop looking there, but curiosity sinks its claws in deep and drags my gaze further south to where the water licks at his hips, molding his pants to his body. The intent way he watches me sharpens, and the front of his pants shifts. Okay. So you can see just how the woman is describing the male. How can I say this? First off, a lot of people will read this kind of stuff and will go, oh, the writing is bad. Well, the writing is actually doing what's intended to do, which is not be super thirsty. It's intended to give the feeling of the man with, how can I say it? With more focus on the psychology of the character, or more focus on what he's thinking and feeling. And so these kinds of descriptions tend to be rather broad stroke brushes and are not intended to be extremely nitty gritty, I guess. However, even in more erotic scenes like this, where we have descriptions of the body, we can see that the author is still very, very careful to present this half-dragon man, this largely dragon man, who he is a dragon, but you can see that in all ways he is more or less a man, just with the head of a dragon and 2 dicks. And yeah, and this is where a lot of people will go, okay, 2 dicks, what about that? Well, let's just say that even how those are described, it's not described the way that you'd think it would be. All right, so let's get into then the final observation, which is how the sex is described, right?
I don't. I stand there, frozen, and watch his cock harden just from the sight of me, from my attention on him. Except it looks strange, Anne. I blink. You have 2 cocks. Yes. My mouth works, but I can't find words. 2. And they look to be in proportion with him, which means they're massive. I don't. What? 2.
Okay. So, yeah. All right, so what we have here is a description of basically 2 dicks, but you can see once again that there is almost no in-depth, nitty-gritty description of what they look like. Even later on, when they do get into some description, it's still not the same way that I think men would be writing it. And it's still very much focused on more of how the woman feels or how she's psychologically feeling as opposed to what is actually happening in the scene. All right, now let's take a look from the guy's perspective.
Walking up the stairs next to her feels strange. Even as I command myself to look away, I can't help studying the body revealed by the now sheer dress. She's tinier than I expected, and despite my earlier assurances, I wonder if I will fit. Maybe others' tastes run to pain, but that's never been my preferred flavor of pleasure. I suspect the same is true for this woman.
Now, isn't this interesting? Because this is written by a woman, and she's writing as a dragon man. And this dragon man isn't looking at the woman like most men would look at the woman. That is to say, the way this character is being written is still within the framework of what a woman wants in her fantasies, which is a man that's looking at her and is definitely sexualizing her, but is not being so nitty-gritty and kind of gross about it. All right? It's still very, very broad stroke brush. There are, in fact, romances that are extremely nitty-gritty and will actually have a lot of detail that almost verges on the obscene. But these are subgenres. The average woman who wants to sit down and, sink into a hot bath and enjoy some romance is actually not looking for super steamy sex scenes. The books that sell the most have very broad stroke brush sex and sexual descriptions. So think about that for a hot minute. All right, this is going to be a look at how the man pleasures the woman with his tongue.
His forked tongue flicks out and caresses my bottom lip. I open for him. It doesn't even occur to me not to. His tongue strokes mine. It's not quite a kiss in the traditional sense of the word, but our jaws are hardly compatible for that kind of thing. Before I can decide it's awkward, he tilts me back and licks his way down my throat in sensual little flicks that make me shiver. Sol pauses at my breasts and nuzzles me, like a cat scent marking their owner. Then his tongue is at my nipples, remarkably agile as he tugs and toys with me. Each pull sends an answering one lower in my body. I don't know how to feel.
Here's the thing about that. Once again, we have clearly a very bestial thing going on. But if you look carefully at how they focus it, it is not intended to be extremely weird. It still is intended to be intimate. It still is intended to be accessible to an average female audience who is looking for this. And so, it is just very, very intimate, and it's not intended to be super duper sexual. Now, does this mean that there are zero scenes in here? I will just post a couple screenshots of other pieces of content. And you can see for yourself that there is, in fact, description of penetration and stuff. But once again, you can see here that it is not as weird as some people might think. Okay. But it is definitely erotic for sure. Okay. And then we have this one here. It is definitely erotic for sure. Okay. And then we have this one here. This is from the girl's perspective, once again. And, it's related to, the G spot, this magical spot. This kind of stuff, honestly, really bores me. But anyhow, it is what it is. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this in here. paste this in here. We won't even read this out loud. You can just push pause and read it. But you can see, once again, this is from the male perspective. It is erotic, it is steamy, but I'm sure a lot of people would be like, well, that's that's kind of shitty or poorly written, and it actually isn't. It's not intended to be this nitty-gritty, super filthy sex. This is much more about the emotional intimacy than anything else. Now, this is only one book out of the many. I would have to figure out a way to review the other books. I currently, it's not financially feasible for me to buy romance books and read them. They're, number one, they're expensive. Number two, me putting personal money to reading romance is, I don't know, I'm a cheapo. If I'm going to spend money on a books, I want to do it on a really nice book. You know what I mean? So let's summarize this up. Women enjoy erotica, okay? Women love sex, okay? And any woman who points a finger at a man and says, you are a pig for liking this or that video game with your big titties, I think that woman is usually hypocritical. I, however, do know actual women, and there are a portion of religious females, women who are people of faith, who do not appreciate their male counterparts being extremely gross and thirsty. So there are those kinds of women. But the setting aside women of faith, setting aside religious people, your average woman who may not have any particular, shall we say, moral imperative to hold people to a standard, these women who appear to be criticizing males for their interests while themselves potentially participating in equally erotic adult entertainment, these women are hypocrites. And they just need to admit it and just say, hey, I like my fantasy, you like your fantasy. Bim, bam, boom, everyone's happy. However, I do want to assure some people, okay? I need to assure some people here. Books like these are niche, okay? Whoever made that stand in Barnes & Noble is not actually representing the general tastes and interests of women, okay? Most women are going to walk by that shelf and not pick up from that shelf. And even if you were interested in that kind of stuff, the titillating and shocking pairing actually hides a deeper truth. And the deeper truth is that the content within is actually comparatively, so far, from what I've seen, it's rather tame, okay? It's nothing new. It's nothing new. Yes, are there two dicks involved? Yes. But it's if we look at how the sex and the steam is being described, how it is being explored, how it is coded, it is still within the framework of what most women are looking for: psychological and emotional comfort in the arms of a competent, powerful male. Okay? It's not the raunch fest that most people might think it is. All right? It's still raunchy, but it's not like completely nitty gritty, like just banging, banging, banging. In fact, large portions of that book is just the woman sitting around, crying about the direction of her life, the psychological journey of the male and the female to each other. The writer, in this case, Robert, is very careful to skirt around reality because the majority of women who buy these books, who are not a majority voice, may I add, want to dip into fantasy, but not in reality. Therefore, it is important to point out that while this entire book, is a reminder to everyone that women are interested in physical experiences as much as men, men who look at this whole situation with romance, whether it's this sub-niche genre or whether it's a general genre, men looking on need to remember that just because women look like they're pursuing perverted interest doesn't mean they're signaling a desire to act on it. It's just them enjoying fantasy. And they also have to recognize that women are not processing this desire the same way that men, are. And so it's a very complex situation in the sense that women are pursuing interests, but that doesn't mean they want to act on it anymore. When men pursue interests, doesn't necessarily mean that that man in that particular moment wants to act on it. Now, generally speaking, I think men are more willing to act on their sexual desire. And they sometimes make the mistake of thinking that if a woman is saying something sexual, she is ready to act on it. That is not always the case. That is just... we have a situation where both sexes are judging the other sex by their own sex standards. It's just like wild, So I'm giving out a warning here to guys who are looking on and going, what the heck is going on here? Number one, books like this are niche. They do not represent a majority interest. And they actually don't necessarily point to women necessarily being ready to just throw off the shackles of common sense and run down that hill and just start having mad sex with everyone. However, at the same time, I feel like I need to address my fellow females because women need to stop pointing fingers at men for being perverts or chasing fantasies. Because let's all be real here, we are all human, and most humans on the planet, unless they have been traumatized or unless they are people of a certain religion or certain faith or certain cultural background, most people are engaging in some kind of fantasy-related activity. All right? It's going to happen somewhere. Most people do it. And women need to stop getting on their little high horses and being like, oh my God, look at those bubbies. Oh my God. Women need to stop feeling so defensive when a guy is just having a fantasy moment. And guys should not feel defensive when a woman is having a fantasy moment. They should just leave each other alone, really. And everything will, sort itself out. Honestly, most women do not go for this kind of stuff, okay? And they are very, very, very vanilla and very, very, very basic, okay? However, there is a current woke trend that specifically comes out of wokeism, although I am sure that there are also a bunch of women who are religious who are also speaking out usually. And it's hard to tell the difference sometimes online. But the woke women need to stop pointing fingers at guys for being perverts, because a lot of women who are pursuing fantasies to hide their desires, or who are pursuing some kind of bizarre monster human fantasy because they want to, walk on the wild side for a few minutes, I think they just need to recognize this is my fantasy. This doesn't mean it's real life. And and just stop trying to hand wave away what they're doing while pointing fingers at what men are doing. So anyway, that is all I really have to say. I hope that my explanation was good enough for anyone who was a bit confused by what was shown on Asmongold's stream. And I guess the whole takeaway is enjoy yourself, but be safe at the same time. And don't mistake other people's enjoyment as being expectations IRL, unless they are crossing the streams, in which case you may have to, have a come to Jesus moment. Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to end here, and I hope everyone has a lovely day. Enjoy yourself, and I'll see you around.